Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, a licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Today is a pop up live. I was not planning to go live. I got a moment in my schedule to be able to cover the sentencing of Robin Howington. So I started covering this one, and this is the video. I have this video linked where I covered some of Robin's testimony. She was found guilty in the murder of her daughter, Destiny. And in this and in her sentencing, they are going to continue, the defense is going to continue to try to say that her 2-year-old son is the one who was responsible. And the state, their belief is that Robin gave at least seven different false statements to the police, including falsely accusing Destiny's father. So Destiny's father was not present for the event. And the details of this case are very, very troubling. So troubling. And I am glad that you all are joining. uh I saw this and I was so glad that I was able to get to cover it. I only have until 1 p.m. So I only have and I don't know how long this is going to go. So I am going to skip over the prosecution. I do believe that the father of Destiny is going to give a statement, that the victim in this case, that her father, because he did not testify in the case. It's my understanding, I think. Oh, so that what case? So this is Robin Howell. I will go back, Phoenix, to this one. So I covered this one a while back. She was found guilty. So the woman pictured is Robin Howington, and the child that was unalived in an incident. She was just sitting on her couch at home watching cartoons, and it's my understanding that the bullet like went through the remote, and I think possibly even her hand or something. And Robin, the mother in this case, she is going to say that it was her child. There's also a trigger warning for sexual assault. For SA, she says that a police officer, while she was doing duty, like while she was doing community service, that something inappropriate happened. She won a settlement in that case, and she claims that she has PTSD. And I work with a lot of people that have PTSD, and the defense is going to try to say that her PTSD is a mitigating factor that the judge should consider. That anyone in her state, and after learning what she learned, that somehow, I don't know, like her lawyer is going to try to say some stuff, and we are going to listen to all of that. So let's dive right into this. The link to the full, because the prosecution we had some really good arguments earlier on. I don't know that I have time to cover all of it. So let's hop in. The person speaking is her lawyer. So her lawyer is currently giving his argument for why she should have a lesser sentence in this case.
I think more so, not all cases are the same. This is a case where they're saying and said to the jury, we're not telling you she intended any of this to happen. And then again, almost like with the age of the victim, if she didn't intend any of it to happen, then how do we hold her responsible anymore for particularly great injury that she didn't intend to happen than we did for age? This was a horrendous family tragedy, which has not been made any better for anybody because of this trial and its conclusion.
During her testimony, I said I thought I might have seen some tears, and we all looked for them. People were watching this on big screen TVs, and nobody saw tears. Her emotion, she'll continue to go in and out of this emotion throughout her attorney's statement. Yeah.
It's still a tragedy. And it's as much a tragedy for Ms. Howington as it is for anybody else.
Unfortunately, Mr. Whalen, most of what this court deals with on a daily basis is tragedies.
I don't disagree, Judge, but we rarely see them at this level. I mean, in this circumstance. I don't know how pretrial release got to be a sentence of release to the community.
I'm not very concerned about that.
But
Oh my gosh. I hate it when that happens. So the judge is pretty much going to be like, I am not about to release her to the community. I'm going to have to find my place again. Sorry about that.
Than we did for age. This was a horrendous family
further.
tragedy. Not allowed to go with her daughter, but taken to the hospital, told her daughter is dead, and within an hour.
So he's the defense lawyer is explaining like the state that she was in, and kind of, I guess he's trying to excuse why she gave some of the statements that she gave.
Hour is in the interview room with Mr. Riddle, and when she tells them she's nervous because she was raped by a, he loses his mind, and yells and screams at her and questions her humanity. At that point, that interview was over. That she is fully triggered at this point, and by an officer who's sitting there talking to the woman whose child is dead and yelling and screaming at her over and over again. And the state then stands up again and says, well, you should consider as an enhancement factor uncharged conduct in that she tried to frame Antoine Oliver.
Yes.
The testimony is crystal clear. I asked them who raised Antoine Oliver as a suspect first. They did. Then you asked her, do you?
But she could have said no. She could have said no, he wasn't there. She went as far as picking him out of a lineup. Like, what? What? Wow.
You believe he would do that? And she said, no, I guarantee you he didn't do it. And then they stayed on it until she says, I can't take it. You're right. I can't take it anymore. You're right. She did not try to frame Antoine Oliver. They did. And then you have the nerve to come in here and tell the jury different, and then stand up at sentencing and say different. That is not true. It has never been true. She agreed with them after denying it and telling them she guaranteed them he did not do it. A woman who is in her mental condition is in the interview room from about 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. with them. She did not get the 48 to 72 hours a police officer would have gotten to be able to get their thoughts together. She went from the hospital being told your daughter's dead to being interviewed.
I also think, so in my opinion, I think she's crying for herself, and she's fighting for her life, and she's crying about what she went through, and we are glossing over what happened to her child. And the father, Antoine, he is not going to give a statement in the courtroom. He prepared a written statement, and they are going, the prosecution is going to read his statement.
Further, we would say that number 7 applies, that she was motivated by a desire to provide necessity for her family or herself. And what she said from the beginning was that she puts that gun outside, and within minutes after all that is texting her friend to go pick up the gun that Gavin.
In my opinion, she was trying to hide her crime. Like, that's what it seemed like to me. If I was on the jury, to me, it seemed like she was trying to cover her traces, and she was trying to cover herself. Because she's going to try to say that she didn't want, I don't know, she was trying to protect her surviving child, and that's not how I saw it.
And killed Destiny. So she's telling that story from the beginning. She explains to them why, when she tells them that story, that she didn't tell them in the beginning say that to the police was because she didn't want Gavin to live with the fact that he had accidentally killed his sister. There's been no proof that that's not true, that wasn't her motivation. And she was telling people she told Mr. Key from the beginning. And Mr. Key, again, I should have raised that on the enhancements, that He said he met her as through somebody else who Miss Howington sold pills to. Your Honor may recall that the Friday before that trial, he testified he knew her, he was introduced to her to do odd jobs around the house. And he did odd jobs around the house. And he got some pills. And then he comes to trial. So she says, how do you know him? Oh, as a drug dealer. That's not what he testified to at that suppression, at that hearing the Friday before the trial. That was not the first thought of Miss Howington. It was about that she paid him to.
Because so the state believes right before this incident, the state believes that she likely did a drug deal with somebody and that had been waiting for her while she was at the park with her kids, that there was somebody waiting for her at the house and something happened, but they are thinking that it was likely a drug deal and that was why she had the weapon. She's going to try to say that she got the weapon because she was afraid of Destiny's father and blah blah blah. Like that is what she's going to say. There is speculation that Destiny might have wanted to be with her dad and that she might have enjoyed time with her dad and that Robin might have been a little jealous of that. That's the speculation.
To do odd jobs around the house. But that part of the story that she was trying to protect Gavin was consistent if it wasn't the first statement she gave them, because she was still trying to protect Gavin at that point. She gives them the statement that an unknown black man fired a shot from the door. Clearly, she did not do that for racial reasons. Both of the fathers of both of her children, of those young children, are black men. She didn't have anything against black men. She's just trying to protect Gavin and keep them off of Gavin. Is that necessarily a rational concern? Might be if you got PTSD and you've just been through what she's been through. It would tend to make you irrational. The third mitigator we would submit is number 8, that she was suffering from a mental or physical condition that significantly reduced her culpability for the offense. And that, again, is just the same thing that I've argued before, is on the PTSD and what's happened that night in her home, and then being taken to the police department and abused by Detective Riddle.
She was not.
I've never seen happen before in any interview, or to that level.
So I do think the officer was probably frustrated and might have raised his voice at her because like she just kept giving them false statement after false statement. None of her stories were making any sense. And he might have been frustrated that she was lying to them. Like that's I don't know. Oh,
The last mitigator is that number 11. Although guilty of the crime, she committed the offense under such unusual circumstances that it's unlikely that a sustained intent to violate the law motivated the conduct. Unfortunately, when we look at what the medical examiner said, once that shot was fired, within 90 seconds at the most, that child, Destiny, was dead. The responding officer said, he tried to save her life. But by the time he got there, Destiny would have been dead. And he finally admitted that, yes, clinically, she was deceased. Clinically and in every other way by that moment. So it's a horrible thing, but for him, he did the best he could under the circumstances. So we would suggest, Judge, that there was, again, because of the way it's charged, even as a negligent act, it's hard to understand how you could negligently intend to violate the law in this matter, or that intent motivated the criminal conduct. It was this idea that she had a gun in the house and didn't know where it was. Had it not been for Mr. Oliver coming over and being upset that a boyfriend was there and taking the gun
So they're gonna try to say that he took the gun apart and that it was his fault. Like they are, oh, this is really tough. This is really, really tough.
Away from her, throwing it on the ground, and he testified. Callie picked it up, put it back together. She testified. Callie said, "What do I do with this?" She said, "Put it away." When they asked her in the police department, "Where do you keep your gun?" she told them where she kept her gun. She wasn't thinking, she hadn't had that 48 to 72 hours, that she didn't know where Callie put the gun. It was just a horrible circumstance on that particular day that led that gun to be where Gavin could find it. So we would say that if you the court finds that there are, she has no prior felony convictions, and I think that's clear, and that there are no, if the court finds that there are no enhancement factors and finds that there is a mitigating factor, then we would ask the court to sentence her as a specially mitigated offender. It would reduce the sentence on that charge to 13.5, I think. And the lesser rate means nothing, but it's a constricted sentence under the statute that's still 85%. So that's what we would be asking the court to do.
All right. The state has in their sentencing memorandum urged that under TCA 4035-115 that consecutive sentencing should be considered by the court. As each of you are familiar and well versed in, that in this state, in order for this court to impose a consecutive sentence unless otherwise provided by law, that she has to meet one of the criteria.
And I believe there was an allegation that I think the father might have seen the weapon like just out in the living room or something. There are allegations that she did not properly secure it. And so that the allegation is that he was upset, other people had seen the weapon not away and properly secured. And the way that she stored it was like in a closet on a top shelf. And and as we learned in the Crumbly case and all those other things, like make sure to properly secure weapons if you have them.
Criteria within that statute.
But I do not believe that that the 2-year-old, I don't, in my I don't know. Like that story just doesn't make sense, and it's really convenient the way that she told it. I think she was trying to find a story. These are just my thoughts. I think she was trying to find a story that could fit the evidence.
Which do you say are applicable?
So, Your Honor, if you don't mind, just because I did not get a chance to respond to Mr. Whalen's.
You don't need to. Let's go to consecutive sentencing.
Okay.
You don't need to.
The ones that we specifically say are, one, that the defendant is a professional criminal who has knowingly devoted life to criminal acts as a major source of livelihood. And 4, that the defendant is a dangerous offender whose behavior indicates little or no regard for human life and no hesitation about committing a crime. Oh, I'm sorry. I said 1. I meant to say 2 and 4. Okay, yeah. I apologize, Your Honor. I meant to say 2 and 4, not 1 and 4. So 2 being that the defendant is an offender whose record of criminal activity is extensive, and 4 being that the defendant is a dangerous offender whose behavior indicates little or no regard for human life and no hesitation about committing a crime when the risk to human life is high. And so, Your Honor, I do just want to kind of touch on a few things that Mr. Whalen just said. First of all, when we're talking about Miss Howington and all these problems that she is suffering, the only evidence that was introduced regarding her PTSD or anything else like that came straight from her mouth. We did not.
True. That's misstating the record. They went through her purse and asked her about every medication she was on, and it was all PTSD, psych meds.
Newsflash to both of you. I tried the case, and I'm very familiar with what the facts are. You don't need to address the enhancement factors. Make your argument on consecutive sentencing.
When we look at number 2, that the defendant is an offender whose record of criminal.
I personally think the judge had already made up his mind about that. I think the judge was like, continue. Like he heard the other side, but he's going to base it on what's already been submitted, and nothing that was said by the defense. I don't think it changed his mind.
Criminal activity is extensive. There's case law that makes it very clear that that does not necessarily mean a defendant who has multiple prior convictions. The court can look to the criminal conduct in the case at hand when determining whether or not a defendant is someone who has a record or an extensive record of criminal activity. Again, Your Honor, when we look at this case, the defense wants to keep arguing this is a tragedy, this is an accident, all these things. I don't dispute the fact this is 100% a tragedy. The problem is the tragedy was caused by the defendant and no one else. They want to point the blame at the child's father, who was nowhere near when the shooting occurred. They want to point the blame at saying that she was raped, by the way, which, again, I'm not saying that she wasn't. I'm not saying that she's a victim. What I'm saying is that in that particular case, Your Honor, the person who she said raped her was convicted of false reports. That is all we know. And certainly, Mr. Whalen would not allow the state to get up here and call somebody who was convicted of false reports a rapist. So that's all I'll say about that. Again, every single thing that happened in this case was her fault and her fault alone. Not only did she, according to her own statement, leave a loaded and cocked firearm within reach of a 2-year-old for days. That was her testimony. Her testimony was that this happened days before, that Callie supposedly went inside, put it away. She never checked where he put it. She never did anything. But then a 2-year-old, again, according to her statement, a 2-year-old has the ability to find it within about 3 minutes. He was pretty small. The court saw pictures, measurements of him. He didn't take stools around everywhere and climb up like she initially claimed. That was not the case. This thing was sitting out where it was easily accessible to him. This tragedy was 100% preventable, and the person that should have and could have prevented it is the defendant.
There was also evidence that there was gunshot residue on the 2-year-old, but we don't know if it was placed on him or if he was just nearby, or if he is the one that fired it. And then there was also residue on her as well, on Robin, which meant that she had to be within a certain proximity, because she tried to say that she was outside when she heard the bang and came in, but the evidence doesn't support that.
She's not the victim here. The victim is the 5-year-old child that died, okay? So not only do we have the issue of this defendant being just careless and negligent as far as it goes with the gun, it's her actions after her daughter is shot.
Yep.
That we urge the court to consider.
All right, thank you.
And also, well, I guess that kind of goes in with the behavior indicates little or no regard for human life. A lot of that does. There are just a couple of other things that I do want to bring to the court's attention. Sorry. Again, we talk about the detectives beating up on her and everything like that. Your Honor, we all saw the video. The detectives absolutely did say they suggested Antoine first, okay? No doubt about that. The fact of the matter is, she knew good and well that Antoine had nothing to do with it. She could have persisted in saying no. That's all she had to do. She didn't have to continue to make up story after story after story. She didn't have to pick him out of a lineup. Mr. Oliver could not go to his own daughter's funeral because she had literally framed him for murder. When she took that stand and I asked her that, her words verbatim were, Antoine didn't matter. That's what she said. Those were her words. I didn't put those words in her mouth. The detectives didn't put the words in her mouth. Those were her words on the stand. She did not care about him whatsoever. She didn't care. She didn't care about anybody in this case but herself. This was not about protecting 2-year-old Gavin. All of her lies were not about protecting Gavin. If she wanted to protect her son, she should have done that before he got a hold of her gun. So for all those reasons, Your Honor, in this case, we are asking the court to not only give the maximum sentences, but we are asking the court to order consecutive sentences based on those factors.
All right, let me hear from, is Mr. Oliver going to be the only victim impact statement?
Yes.
Let me hear that.
I do have some argument on consecutive.
folks, the case law on this is very clear. And, you know, I can do this for show, but I don't operate that way. It would never stand up on appeal in this court's humble judgment to sentence her consecutively. Let me hear from Mr. Alber.
So I think that's how the victim impact statement that I'm going to read.
You're going to read it?
I'm going to read it.
Okay.
Your Honor, I have a lot to say. I beg the court in diligence while I speak my piece because I've found over the years I'm not always afforded an opportunity to say stuff, and I must speak the truth. So this time, if for no other reason than that, this court is going to hear the truth. I can't speak for anybody else, but I can tell you if nobody else says it, I'm going to speak the truth, and this is it. Who knew that on September the 12th of 2019, that would be the last time that I got to see and spend time with my beautiful daughter, Destiny Jariah Oliver. She was absolutely the true definition of a daddy's girl. All Destiny ever wanted was to be with her daddy. Robin was jealous of our relationship and she couldn't stand it. Destiny was the best daughter that any father could have asked for. I was so excited to surprise my daughter and to have the opportunity to pick her up from school that Thursday. Her face always lit up when I arrived to get her, and that day was no different. I always made plans of doing a lot of fun activities with her after school when I was able to get her. That day was different, though. It was very special. First, we went and got food from her favorite place, Chick-fil-A. Next, we continued our journey to National Fitness Center off Walbrook Drive in Knoxville. She went swimming, and she also did rock climbing that day. After a few hours, we left there and went to Brewster's to get ice cream. We ordered our ice cream and sat on the bench and enjoyed it together. As we sat there, I looked at my baby girl. I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. We talked about what she wanted to be for Halloween and what she wanted for her 6th birthday that was coming up that was less than 4 weeks away. But that moment was extra special as I stared into my daughter's eyes, not knowing that it would be the last time of having her in my possession. My last time being able to do anything with my precious daughter. We left West Knoxville and headed back over towards Fountain City so that I could take her home. As I got closer to Broadway, Robin called and asked if I could go to Party City to get a costume for Destiny for school. We had a few words. At that point, I knew that she was trying to cause problems. I hung up on her and went to Party City and let Destiny pick out her costume for school. Shortly after that, we arrived at her house. I got Destiny out of my vehicle, and as I approached the door of the house, Robin came out of the house and instantly started attacking me. I tried to deflect the blows that she was throwing. Then her boyfriend came outside, and I asked him to get her, but he refused. He then closed the door so that the kids couldn't see what was going on. Robin and I had a few more words before she went back inside and came back out with a gun. I asked her, "What are you going to do with that?" And she said she was going to shoot me. I noticed that she really didn't know what she was doing. And the first chance that I got, I grabbed the gun and disarmed her. I took the clip and made sure that.
I believe every word of this. This sounds like exactly what happened. And because on this day, this is the day that Robin threatened him with a weapon. And Robin accuses him of all types of horrific things. And wow. But like I think, is that contempt? The one thing up? I know, Sarah, I know you do. That right there, what she's doing with her mouth. Oh my gosh. I believe every word of this.
That no round was in the chamber. I was going to throw the gun on the roof of the house so that she couldn't get to it, but ended up tossing the clip in one direction and the gun in the opposite direction so that they would be far apart from each other. Robin then ran back into the house to get something else. I didn't know what she was doing, so I got back in my vehicle. She came back out with her cell phone, threatening to call the police on me. She asked her boyfriend, did he find the firearm, and he said yes. She then proceeded to try to open the door of my vehicle, yelling and screaming at me. I rolled my window down and told her boyfriend that he needed to get away from her because she's trouble and that he had no clue that she was a psychopath, and then I left. To this very day, I wish that I never had taken Destiny back over there that Thursday night. Robin then called me early Saturday morning as if nothing happened Thursday night. I did get to speak to my daughter on the phone, but it was not long at all. Robin took the phone from her and proceeded to talk as if nothing happened. I told her she was crazy, and then I hung up on her. I didn't speak to her anymore that Saturday. I didn't find out about Destiny's death until the next day, which was Sunday, and was told that she had passed away. The grandmother called and told me that Destiny was dead. I couldn't believe what I was being told. It was the worst day of my life. My family and I went straight to the Knoxville Police Department to find out what happened to Destiny. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being lied to. I spoke with an officer. He asked me a few questions about my whereabouts Saturday night, and shortly after that, he said that I was the one who had killed my daughter, which was false. I wasn't even in the city when my daughter had died. I was told to come back the following day to speak with detectives. I came back in the next day, which was Monday, and I was interrogated for quite some time. The detectives wanted my cell phone so that they could search it and invade my privacy. I was humiliated, yelled at by these detectives, and then accused of killing my own daughter in cold blood. I couldn't believe what I was going through. Here I am, a grieving father that had just lost his daughter and being blamed for killing her. I was threatened multiple times that if I didn't give them my cell phone, that they would hold me and lock me up. I ended up giving it to them and still haven't received it back to this day. 2 days after the interrogation, they got a search warrant and kicked in my door and raided my residence. They told my landlord that I was wanted for murder and that I was never coming back because I was going down for killing Destiny. My landlord thought very highly of me until that day, and he wanted me out of the house immediately. Unfortunately, I wasn't there at the time of the raid, and that was the same time as my daughter's funeral. I wasn't able to attend the funeral because of this situation. They really ruined my entire life while I was still trying to process the death of my baby girl. I was unable to get all of my belongings from the house. Some items were stolen. Some items were also left behind. I ended up spending a lot of unnecessary funds on attorney's fees because I was being accused when I was completely innocent and had nothing to do with any of it. Your Honor, this woman has caused my family, friends, and I so much pain and heartache. She has been a very violent individual. In the past, she tried to have my ex-girlfriend kidnapped and admitted that to me. My ex-girlfriend had to purchase a gun for protection because of Robin. Robin has vandalized multiple vehicles of mine. She has vandalized one of my other friends' vehicles that was parked outside of my place.
Ron, this goes beyond the scope.
I can consider it only for the purposes of victim impact statement.
I think so.
Evidence.
I think so.
I've lost thousands and thousands of dollars that I've invested over the years because of this lowlife. She has harassed me by following me and popping up at my house at all times and stalked me for years because I didn't want to be with her and she couldn't stand seeing me in a relationship with someone else. She broke into my house and stole a lot of valuable items previously. She has lied and made false reports numerous times. One time she even called the police and told them that I was kidnapping our daughter one night. She had the whole entire police department at my house for nothing. She's threatened to have my mother's brains blown out. She's also said that she knew people that didn't have a problem with killing a kid. She even called DCS on my son's mom for no reason, trying to get her children taken away from her. This woman should have been taken off the streets years ago and put away behind bars, but she lies and manipulates the system and always manages to slip away without getting in trouble. This woman is a real piece of work, as you can all see by now. This isn't even a fraction of all that she's put me through. Robin used my daughter to get at me any way that she could. Sometimes she would go weeks without letting me see and talk to Destiny. There were numerous times that Destiny cried and cried because she didn't want to go back home with her mother. As of October of 2017,
the court might be cutting to him. That might be him. I don't know if it is. I do believe he is in the room. She's looked back that way a few times, and even her lawyer looked kind of back that way when he was talking about Antoine. Antoine might be one of the two African American individuals. I don't, and I'm not gonna try to because he has went through enough, and losing a child, one of the most horrific things. I can't imagine having my child unalived and then being unable to attend their service because of false allegations, and I can't imagine what he's been through.
Ms. Howington Robin had lost custody of both Destiny and Gavin. They awarded custody to Robin's mother. I knew nothing about this. No one contacted me about the situation at all. I never knew anything about these court dates. I didn't find this out until March of 2019. I went to pay child support and happened to ask for any and all documentation filed on Destiny because I was seeking custody of my daughter. They printed out numerous documents, and this is how all of this was revealed to me. After 2 years of me not knowing any of this, it was finally revealed because of my actions. I found out that Robin had a real bad drug habit and she'd lost custody of Destiny because she kept failing drug screens while she was pregnant with Gavin.
Oh, wow.
The court awarded the grandmother custody without my knowledge. Even when Destiny died, the grandmother was there supervising the kids, was supposed to be there supervising the kids because she was appointed to do so. Robin wasn't allowed to have the children unsupervised. The grandmother violated a court order and failed us all, as well as the state, because they shouldn't have been awarded custody without each of the fathers.
Whoa. Wait a minute. So I did not know that. So the father is alleging that she lost custody of the kids and that she was supposed to have supervised visits and that her mother was the one who was supposed to have custody. Like, and in these cases where somebody passes, rarely do they press charges, because everybody was upset about Kevin Frankie. Everyone was upset about with the Paul and y'all know him. Oh my gosh, Shonda Vander Ark. Everybody was so upset about the father in that case. I think his name was Timothy. Was it Timothy? I'm bad with names. I want to say Timothy was the victim in that case. People were always so upset about all of that, but it is incredibly common that when something like this happens, they focus on the person that did it, and they don't always focus on the individual. Now, that grandmother might have lost custody of the I don't know who has Gavin, because to me she failed to, in my opinion, if all that's true, she failed to protect those kids. There was a reason why her daughter wasn't supposed to have unsupervised contact. Wow.
Fathers being evaluated and looked at as having custody of their own children. The state would have done their job correctly, my daughter would have been in better care and would still be alive today. Robin is negligent. She cared nothing about her children. She made up multiple lies years back and had me arrested. I had to enter a best interest plea just to keep from going to jail. I provided video evidence of her actions. She has been the aggressor this entire time, telling me that she's going to have me put in prison somehow, some way. Even in this case, she told law enforcement that I was the one that had killed my daughter. I am the victim here, and she needs to be put away forever. She lied historically and used the state of Tennessee as a weapon against me and everybody else, and attempted to do the same thing in this case. In the past, I've shown videos that I've taken surreptitiously to have to prove that this country isn't premised on proving our innocence. I've had to prove my innocence all because she is a woman, but in reality, she is a lowlife and cared nothing about Destiny or her other children. The only thing she cares about is herself. She lied repeatedly in this case. She's culpable in it. Robin is the reason that my daughter is dead. It is my desire to see her rot in prison. I want her to be there for the rest of her life if possible. If not, I beg the court to give her the maximum sentence possible. She deserves to die in prison. She is responsible for the death of one of the weakest in society, a small, innocent child who was defenseless and had no say in what her mother did and put her through. Yet she did it over and over, and the state turned a blind eye to it. She deserves to die in a prison cell somewhere. That's what I'm asking, to put her in prison for as long as you possibly can. She's a liar. She's a manipulator. She's responsible for the death of our daughter. Robin is a poor excuse for a human being. She again is responsible for the death of a child, someone who didn't have any say-so in what was going on. She manipulated the courts in this country and punked everyone here for years, making up lies about me. Again, I've had to enter a best interest plea, and my attorneys have had to show videos that I've taken to prove my innocence. I've had to prove my own innocence, and that's not how this country was founded. That's not what our Constitution is premised upon. But I've had to do that because she is a master liar and manipulator, and used this court and every court in this country to her benefit to get even with me and to accomplish her will, all because I didn't want to be with her. Even during the course of this case, she's lied through her teeth and said it was me that was responsible for this horrific tragedy. I ask this court to give her the maximum sentence possible. It is my desire to see her spend the rest of her life in a prison cell. Because of Robin, I have no daughter now. At a minimum, I desire for her to be put away forever. I'm asking for consecutive sentences, maximums on every charge ran consecutively so that she never comes out of prison. She is a poor excuse for a human being. That is what prisons are made for, is to keep people like her who victimize anybody that they can for their own benefit.
I am going to fast forward a little bit.
And for the death of our daughter, she further begging.
Certain. All right.
She didn't say anything? She didn't give a statement? What? Oh, the judge is she's not going to say anything at all? What?
The court is tasked pursuant to TCA 40-35-114, TCA 40-35-113 to first find whether enhancement and mitigating factors, which are confined to these two statutes are applicable. The state urges a number of different enhancement factors. There's a couple that I'm going to rely upon because I think they're just glaringly obvious in this case. And while I could find perhaps other enhancement factors, I don't think there's any point in muddying the record up on appeal with going into those, because there's no specific set of enhancement factors. There's no calculus or graph that the court has to follow as far as I can only go up so far if I find 1 versus finding 5. That's not what the law says. Ms. Howington, this is a strange case. This is one of the more unusual cases among the hundreds that I've tried as a lawyer or as a judge. But there are a couple of things in this case that are just glaringly obvious. I agree with what General Good just said a few minutes ago. You are not the victim in this case. You have a previous history of criminal convictions or criminal behavior. What you had before the night that this tragedy occurred was not very significant, although you were engaged in the trafficking of illicit narcotics, and the court can consider that. But I really don't know how you could have made this much worse than what you did that night. Within literally minutes of when your daughter had been shot and killed, you were attempting to hide the firearm that was used to kill her. You're not concerned. You weren't then. You're not now. You're not concerned with trying to protect Gavin. You're concerned with trying to protect Gavin's mother. And you have been, you were that night, and I will believe that from this point forward.
Exactly.
I don't know how you could interpret this evidence any other way. You have a previous history of criminal conviction, criminal behavior. You tried to hide the gun that was used to kill your daughter while her body was still warm. When you were taken to UT Hospital to be checked for shock before you spoke with law enforcement, you attempted to solicit another person to take your cell phone so that it couldn't be looked at, and then you.
I forgot to mention that. So she was at the bathroom. She was in the bathroom at the hospital, and her daughter is deceased, and she's trying to get a stranger to take her phone. And thank goodness that stranger didn't take her phone.
You tried to destroy the cell phone. Within seconds, if not minutes, of when your daughter was shot and killed, you're calling 911 and making up a story about how it all happened. And repetitively, I quit counting at about 20, repetitively throughout hours worth of police interviews, not just that night, but on other occasions as well. You made up story after story after story. And this court can consider every bit of that as criminal conduct. So you clearly have a previous history of criminal convictions or criminal behavior, which enhances your sentence in this case. As to count 2, the aggravated child neglect where there was serious bodily injury, count enhancement factor number 9 applies as well. A firearm and your handling of that firearm is the reason that your daughter is not here now. It's not because Antoine Oliver showed up 2 days earlier. It strains the bounds of credulity to believe that your boyfriend just laid that gun down where a small toddler could just walk in within 2 or 3 minutes after you and your children arrived home, found the gun, pointed it at your daughter, and pulled the trigger. Yeah. When that gun had been in that same place for 24 to 36 hours and nobody saw it. I will never believe that. And I don't think you were honest with the jury about how that happened. But the simple fact remains that however he found it, you were responsible for that gun. What I believe happened, if in fact it was your child that had the gun, when the bullet was fired that killed your daughter, there was a man that came in. And I don't know if it really was somebody to collect window tint payments like you testified to, or if it was a pill deal, but somebody came in. It was a strange man in your house, and I believe you had that gun out for protection. I believe you had a round chambered and the safety off, and that gun was left there. And when you stepped out to smoke, the tragedy occurred. But that's on you and nobody else. So I place great significance on the 2 enhancement factors that I found. Your history as well as the firearm use in this case. As stated previously, the mitigating factors, this was an unusual case. There are unusual circumstances, but I don't place much weight on that as far as mitigating your punishment. So if you would, please, ma'am, stand up.
The judge can barely look at her.
Ms. Howington, in docket number 117659, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty in count one of the lesser included offense of reckless homicide, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range one offender. In count two, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of aggravated child neglect, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 22 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range one offender. In count four, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of false report, a Class D felony, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range one offender. In count five, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of tampering with evidence, a Class C felony, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 5 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range one offender. And finally, in count six, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of attempted tampering with evidence, a Class D felony, you were sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range one offender. These sentences will be served concurrently, one with the other, for a total aggregate sentence of 22 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction. And as your attorney has pointed out, the service rate is at 85%. I wish we weren't here. I know you wish you weren't here. Mr. Oliver wishes that we weren't here, but you're the one responsible. That'll be the judgment of the court. Good luck to you. When do we need to set this for motion for new trial?
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. So people were asking about a new trial, and there would have to be a reason for her to get a new trial. And I personally don't think any of her rights were violated. It does sound like it was an accident. It doesn't sound like this was intentional, like it was planned or plotted. It does sound like there was some accident that happened. It breaks my heart that she tried to blame it on a child and completely deflected any responsibility for her actions. And I work with a lot of individuals that have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they are survivors. They accept responsibility for their actions. They don't try to put their actions off on other people. Some people that are earlier in treatment might still be kind of stuck in victim mode, and that's where we work through it in therapy, because staying in that victim mode where nothing is my fault, everything happens to me, I'm not responsible for anything. Now that trauma that happened, yes, that was not your fault. But everything that happens after that, you can't always blame it on that one incident, on that one thing. Like, people have to take responsibility for what they do. And in my opinion, she did not at all do that. Rehabilitation. So I don't think she's probably going to so her youngest will probably be 18 at least by the time she gets out. There it sounds, so I don't know what rehabilitation might look like. So that'll be on her. If she decides to live her life different, then that will be on her. Where if she decides to take classes, if she decides to learn how to, I don't know, like if she wanted to do culinary, or because sometimes prisons offer certain classes, or people can get certifications. Some prisons do offer therapy if she wanted to work through her issues and everything. Those things are often available depending on the setting, depending on the prison. This case is beyond sad, and I'm glad the judge saw through all of that. And 22 years, so because that is because a child is gone, and she attempted to, in my opinion, she attempted to ruin the father's life or anybody else's life. Because I think at some point she just said it was a black man in a black Chrysler, like a Chrysler 300. I think that was the vehicle that she said it was. And the legal system can sometimes not always be nice to people of color. And this whole case, it baffles my mind. I thank you all for joining me. I have to head to my next thing, But I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. Tomorrow, a new video will drop as well, talking about some case. If you are a member, you have access to that video now. So any members, you have access to that video now. If you're not a member, tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, you'll have access to that one. I hope y'all have a good weekend. Bye.